The campaigns for this presidential election are in full cry. And in the critical battleground states, it's time to buckle up.
What's happening in Michigan now with all the upheaval?
Well, the upheaval is the right word to lead into that.
We start our battleground whistle stops in Michigan, where strange is just getting started.
We have 53 counties out of 83 in Michigan that have more registered voters than eligible voters.
So that's impossible.
That's not possible, right? But it is in Michigan.
It is completely unfair to compete against a biological male.
Men competing in women's sports has become a flashpoint and is now a major lawsuit in college athletics.
I am calling on the NCAA and lawmakers everywhere to stop the suffering and emotional turmoil that is being placed on girls.
We take a look at the status of the battle by women to compete against women.
Trust in both science and our healthcare system needs resuscitation. If humans are to blame, can the machines make it better?
At its best, AI will do what for healthcare?
We take a look at artificial intelligence and whether it might help mend a broken system.
Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. We begin in the key battleground state of Michigan. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have been putting extraordinary efforts into courting voters in the Great Lakes state. Today, we take the temperature of sometimes fickle voters in a crucial swing state.
In the historic downtown of Big Rapids, Michigan, the old Pioneer Store and Emporium and Kilwin's Chocolate Shop is full of sweet surprises. In 2016, owner Carlene Rose says she was Trump all the way.
Yes, I was excited to vote for Trump in the very beginning, and my husband and I both voted for him. I had great expectations. I thought it was really wonderful.
But she says she became disappointed in Trump's character, so in 2020...
I kind of plugged my nose and voted for Biden the second time.
Rose is a quintessential swing voter in a swing state. We'll tell you who she's backing in 2024 in a moment. Swing states are ones that sway back and forth between supporting Democrats and Republicans. Analysts consider this year's most likely swing states to include Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. David Takitaki is a political scientist at Michigan's Ferris State University.
We had both Republican statewide electeds as well as Democratic statewide electeds. In recent years, we've seen it flip back and forth, both in terms of our state house and Senate and in terms of our statewide electeds and differences in the 2016 and 2020 presidential campaigns. So Michigan's a purple state.
Is it unusual that a state would go for one president or presidential candidate and then after he's elected, turn on him the next time when he goes for re-election?
So that kind of change, especially quite so close in between each other, is not super common.
What's happening in Michigan now with all the upheaval?
Well, the upheaval is the right word to lead into that, because if you'd have asked me a few weeks ago, I would have said it looks like Donald Trump is on a flight path to winning Michigan. Most of the polls showed him ahead. I've seen a very significant shift that's not only played out in enthusiasm and in the polls. Today, I'd have to say it looks like Harris is going to take Michigan.
Is her main appeal, do you think, that she's not Donald Trump?
That's a significant part of what I am hearing, right? There were a lot of people who were like, we don't want the two old guys, right? Well, one of the parties seems to have switched that up and gone with someone who isn't one of the old guys.
To review, in 2020, Joe Biden won Michigan. Just 4 years earlier, in 2016, Hillary Clinton was supposedly favored, but on election night, it was way closer than expected. Many news outlets waited 3 full weeks to officially call Donald Trump the winner in Michigan by around 11,000 votes, the slimmest presidential victory in Michigan history.
We did it in 2016. We think we can do it again in 2024.
Pete Hoekstra chairs the Michigan Republican Party.
Clearly, it's ground zero. We win Michigan, we win the presidency, we win Michigan, we win an open Senate seat, we take control of the Senate. We've got a couple of openings for in Congress that we can win, so it's pretty exciting.
The swing state dynamic means the whole presidential election can come down to people in just a few counties in a few key states. With every vote important, Republicans say a big focus is on election integrity.
There's a tremendous amount of pressure in this cycle to make sure that we've got, election integrity. A lot of concerns about what happens in the city of Detroit, what happens in Wayne County, and we still have 53 counties. And you got to think about this. We have 53 counties out of 83 in Michigan that have more registered voters than eligible voters.
So that's not possible.
That's not possible, right? But it is in Michigan. We're working very, very closely with, the National Committee to go in and get as much of that corrected in the voter files cleaned up before the election.
Michigan Republicans won a lawsuit to force the Secretary of State to verify signatures on absentee ballots as required by law. And while analysts say there's fraud in every election, most of it is considered nearly impossible to catch. But in Michigan, a few notable cases give hints. In 2020, a now convicted felon was overseeing election processes in Flint Township. Democrat Kathy Funk tampered with ballots in her own primary and faked a break-in to cover it up. Before she got charged, she'd gone on to serve as election supervisor in Genesee County until 2022. A Detroit professional guardian, Nancy Williams, pleaded guilty in an absentee ballot trafficking scheme involving elderly voters at a nursing home in the 2020 election. And Trenae Rainey got caught forging signatures on absentee ballots at the nursing home where she worked. Hoekstra's Democrat counterpart in Michigan declined our interview request, but advocates in both parties will be working to track every vote, with Republicans pushing people hard for the first time to vote early.
Obviously, how that benefits us is, we can track who's voted. So as we get closer and closer to Election Day, the people that we need to focus on starts to shrink. Or we can just expand our universe to low propensity voters and those types of things. So it does fundamentally change the strategy, and it also takes the risk out of what the weather is like on Election Day if we have banked the votes.
So is it true in most states that the parties can track with precision who voted already and who didn't?
Yes.
By name?
By name.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so and you could see it in our primary results. Typically Democrats turn out earlier. They have more early voting than what Republicans do. On primary day this year in Michigan, we had more Republicans vote early than we did Democrats. So that's an encouraging trend that says, okay, more Republicans are open to voting early.
What did we hear from Michigan voters? Karen Green Bay is a vote for Harris.
The Republican side, they're really motivated to vote Republican, and there's Democrats that are really excited about coming out, and some even voting for the first time or hadn't voted in years. So yeah, I think there's excitement on both parties.
Who are you going to vote for now?
Kamala Harris.
Okay. What are some of your reasons? What are the important things to you? Or is it an issue thing?
I am definitely a never Trumper, so I would classify myself as that. He's obviously mentally ill. He's unstable. It blows my mind that this guy is still a candidate.
I think President Trump will be President Trump again. He's always been President Trump to me, but I think it's going to be very close. I think that's a pendulum swing like we always see, and I think that will come back toward the center, and I think on voting day people are going to say, okay, enough's enough. We've seen what 4 years have done to us. We need to make a change.
I will not vote for Donald J. Trump.
When you say you're not going to vote for Trump, does that mean you're going to vote for Harris, or have you decided?
Oh, yeah.
And what are the reasons?
Just because of the life experience.
Trump's got life experience. What don't you like about him?
He's got life experience as a salesman, real estate, and a TV show, reality show host.
And president.
That doesn't work. Yeah, well, oh, you're good. I don't feel he ever should have been anywhere near the White House.
So what about our swing voter, candy shop owner Carlene Rose, who voted once for Trump and once for Biden?
I am absolutely going to vote for Harris.
Do you feel happier about voting for Harris than about Biden?
I was going to actually write God's name in for as a write-in vote. I was not going to I just could not. I could not support Biden. He was not capable of being a leader. And so when he stepped down and Harris stepped up, I feel really enthused. I'm excited.
Proof that in swing states, elections are like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Several voters who tried to vote twice in the recent primary in a Michigan swing county were not charged with what would have been alleged felonies because prosecutors say the voters meant no harm and the double ballots were caught. Coming up, can the government force schools to let men play on the women's teams? Across the U.S., there are heated court battles trying to stop the Biden administration's controversial new rules forcing schools to let men play on the women's sports teams. Courts have temporarily halted enforcement in numerous states. Lisa Fletcher has both sides in the Title IX debate.
For Carter Satterfield and Juliana Murrow, swimming isn't just a sport. It's a way of life.
I wanted a place where I could work to be the best me, and for me, that's in the pool. I started my freshman year of high school. Going to college and swimming is definitely way more intense, but it's definitely, I'm so used to it, and it's everything to me.
Recruited to swim for Roanoke College, an NCAA Division III school in Virginia, these juniors nearly lost their dream of excelling as competitive racers. Last year, a former member of the men's team tried to switch to the women's team after taking a year off for hormone therapy.
We all agreed that we were willing to not swim if it came down to it, if this athlete was going to be allowed to swim. It is completely unfair to compete against a biological male who had competed very well on our men's team, now wanting to come to the women's team.
With that motivation, last October, the team held a press conference.
I am calling on the NCAA and lawmakers everywhere to stop the suffering and emotional turmoil that is being placed on girls. My name is Lily Mullins, a captain of the Roanoke College swim team, and I stand with female athletes everywhere. Thank you.
Satterfield and Murrow, however, are taking it a step further. They've joined other current and former college athletes in a lawsuit over what they say is a violation of their Title IX rights, a federal law to protect women's athletics and other activities that get federal tax money.
Riley Gaines is the lead plaintiff, and then there's 17 and counting, I believe, female athletes joining the lawsuit to sue the NCAA for breaking their promise to us and not creating fair and safe sport.
Riley Gaines entered the debate as a college swimmer who competed against Leah Thomas, formerly William Thomas. Thomas swam on the men's team at the University of Pennsylvania before switching to the women's team in 2020, shattering women's records. In a 2022 national championship race, Gaines and Thomas tied for 5th place, but the award was given to Thomas.
Unfortunately, it takes negative circumstances, people being adversely affected, losing out on opportunities, being exploited in locker rooms, being injured in their sports before people start to care.
Now, Gaines, Satterfield, and Murrow are part of a group suing the NCAA to bar transgender athletes who are men from competing in women's college sports.
And on the outside, we're going to first, Eastwood of Montana.
And to revoke records and awards won by men in women's competitions. Over the summer, Gaines traveled the U.S. on a bus tour with prominent women, including tennis great Martina Navratilova and Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. They rallied others against a controversial change by the Biden administration. It rewrote Title IX to include gender identity under protections intended for women.
meaning sex-based protections and sex-based rights have been entirely eliminated.
26 Republican attorneys general are challenging that rewrite of Title IX in the lower courts, and judges have agreed to temporarily ban the new regulations in those states.
We were fortunate to grow up in a time when women's rights and spaces were protected.
Ginny Gentles is with the Independent Women's Forum, a nonprofit that informs women about the impact of policy issues and is suing the Biden administration to keep men out of women's sports.
What the Biden administration has done is offered a rewrite through regulations. It didn't do this through Congress. It did this through a regulatory process and taken a 37-word law that protects women and individuals against discrimination in education and created a 1,600-page regulation that throws everything up on its head.
How did this go off the rails?
A big part of it is the rapid growth and embrace among the left of gender ideology. So this idea that we can move away from the long-standing understanding that there's male or female, woman or man, that sex is binary, that we should elevate the rights of people who are describing themselves as a sex or a gender that's not their biological one.
It's been a national debate since at least 2019, when Cece Telfer, raised as Craig Telfer, became the first transgender to win a women's NCAA track and field championship. Advocating for opportunities like that is Carly Webb, a journalist with Outsports who covers LGBTQ issues. Webb identifies as female and says she's lived the debate over people born male playing on women's teams.
Saying there's an unfair advantage.
And people who say that, they're speaking from their transphobia, not from the facts.
When we met last year, Webb had just scored a touchdown on an all-women's tackle football team.
Touchdown Reapers.
Is there a physical gap, though, between women and trans women in terms of just your strength and your ability?
You can't say that definitively because every body is different and every body is different. When you line up 20 people, for example, look at a team picture of the team I play for. There are many different body types across the spectrum.
When we can't decide on a definition of what a woman is, or we can't say sex and talk about biological men, biological women, especially not without being screamed at for being haters or being transphobic, it's really hard.
Satterfield and her teammates are holding steadfast to their position that women's sports should be protected. The transgender swimmer they spoke against left the women's team, but they say the battle isn't over. They're still fighting to be protected in athletics for who they are.
I don't want anyone else to go through what we've been through, and if there's a way that we can protect them through doing this, I would love to be able to help the best that I can.
A federal court recently agreed that religious schools can be exempted from the Biden administration rules that force boys to be allowed to play on girls' teams. Coming up on Full Measure, how AI could fix our broken healthcare system. With the wild growth in artificial intelligence, or AI, we wondered how it might be used to improve America's broken health system. My research led me to Dr. Armand Kilich, a heart surgeon and director of the AI Innovation Center at the Medical University of South Carolina. What was the idea or the concept behind your book?
So the idea was that I think these two fields are starting to merge and intersect. And there's a real need for each of the respective fields to understand each other. You know, artificial intelligence, the pace at which it's evolving is astronomical. I would say maybe the most we've seen in any kind of prior technology. And as it's becoming merged more and more into healthcare, I thought there was a need for both groups to understand each other.
I think many Americans would agree if I say there's a big sentiment out there that our healthcare system is just a mess. It's difficult to get in to see a doctor. It's difficult to get the services you need, maybe particularly from a specialist. There are long waits. There are shortages of things that we need. What are some of the practical applications of AI that you think could help solve some of these problems?
Well, I think there's a whole variety and a whole spectrum of services that AI can offer. So one is eliminating mundane tasks. So as physicians, we're spending half of our time documenting notes and doing other things that we don't necessarily, it's not a best use of our time. And so AI, right, it's very good at managing large volumes of text, speech, audio, video. And then when you talk about shortages, one of the areas probably AI has been most mature right now in medicine is radiology. And if you take a look, if we have an extreme shortage of radiologists and we have to read through 100,000 CT scans in a given period of time, and AI can do it in a few minutes, it may help in triaging and then identifying high-risk cases or cases where there's an abnormality. It may also help identify cases where there was a misdiagnosis. So if you have people who are, on hour 15 of their shift and they miss something in a scan, if you have AI running in the background, it may notify them that there was a mistake and allow them to go back and look at that.
Our biggest concern with what AI could do in healthcare would be what? On the negative side?
I think the biggest concern on the negative side would be further tarnishing the physician-patient relationship. But I think it all stems down to the core of, how do we preserve the clinician and patient relationship and how do you navigate the use of technology through that relationship?
And then at its best, AI will do what for healthcare, do you think?
I think AI can solve some of the problems. I don't think it's going to solve every problem we have in healthcare, and we have major problems in healthcare in terms of making the workforce more productive, reskilling or upskilling or retraining workers where there may be more needed and where AI can fill some of those gaps. And then again, democratization of expert care. So it shouldn't matter if you're in rural America in this state versus an urban area that has a lot of experts co-located and centralized into one area, that we should be able to provide a high level of care no matter where you are in the country.
You're optimistic?
Yeah.
Google recently announced it's training its AI model with 300 million audio samples, including coughs and sniffles, to train it to diagnose illnesses. After a break, what's ahead next week on Full Measure? Coming up next week, a Full Measure interview with Donald Trump. And then in 2 weeks, we travel to Poland for live fire exercises to find out exactly what U.S. troops are doing near the Russian border. Do you expect that Russia knows what's going on today?
Absolutely.
How do they watch?
From all different means. I mean, open source collection for sure. Social media, anything that is advertised. I mean,
the U.S. and NATO preparing to defend Europe if necessary. Next time, 2 weeks on Full Measure. I also hope you'll check out my new book, Follow the Science: How Big Pharma Misleads, Obscures, and Prevails. Until then, we'll be searching for more stories that hold powers accountable. Thanks for watching.